Satnam, beautiful sovereign sister Satnam. This week on the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast, why this first week of September is going to set the tone for a life-changing month with all of the astrology happening, including this new moon in Virgo, this very, very epic Pluto return to Capricorn, and Uranus going retrograde. We're also going to be looking at energy, Kundalini energy, and what this has to do with generational healing while we debunk all of these crazy myths surrounding this very important subject matter. And lastly, but not least, we're going to be looking at this week's ancestral guidance through the tarot, which is revealing even more about Pluto's retrograde back into Capricorn for the last time, which won't happen again for 248 years, and how either you may still be afraid of using your power or abusing your power. All today on the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast episode. Welcome, Satnam. Thank you so much for joining us this week. What a week. I mean, we get here to this very, very epic month of September, and then all of a sudden the first week is like bam, 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 bam. Like, here you go, serving us up all of this massive amounts of change, but also opportunity to close out some very serious, major karmic cycles and to really step into our truth, to step into an era where, you know what, we feel safe surrendering to God and trusting God. So I want to start off by talking about what just occurred between these first 3 days, because it'll really set the tone for how to navigate the month of September. Now, in last month's podcast episode, I actually shared with you all of the major transits to look out for astrologically in the month of September. So go check out that last podcast episode by clicking here down below, where you'll be able to have a better idea of what to expect for the month. This week, I want to break down what occurred this entire week to help us now understand the momentum that is picking up as we get closer to eclipse season, or the actual eclipse, because we're already in eclipse season, and also the fall equinox happening on September 22nd. So as we welcome this very beautiful month of September, before even the new moon occurred on the 2nd, we were already looking at some pretty gnarly, and that's what I'll call it because I don't even know what other word to use, astrological energy. Right as September 1st hit, we also felt this basically big shift occur in consciousness, because what happened right on the 1st was that Uranus, the planet of shock and revelations, went retrograde in Taurus. And through this, we could feel this basically sudden change of innovation. When we go retrograde in a planet, it's this inward journey that we're all taking. And being retrograde, Uranus shocking truth revelations in Taurus, the sign of material resources and values, what this retrograde is really prompting us to do is to reassess what our relationship with money, possessions, and our core values, which is a big deal. Because during this period, especially as it goes retrograde and stays retrograde and peaks through November, December, and goes direct finally until January, you could be experiencing a lot of unexpected insights about what? Your financial situation. Or you may even start to really feel this strong urge to break free from these generational patterns of what? Earning and spending. What you value as it relates to money. It's not that valuing money is bad. It's that you have to get real with money, and you have to understand that money is like any other relationship. And if you don't have a good relationship with money where you're hanging out with her every day, looking at her in your accounts and all these different things because of the generational patterns that may have been passed down to you, then that's what needs to be realigned. That's what needs to be shifted. So it's really an excellent time to innovate your approach to resources. Maybe even look at alternative ways that you can make money. Maybe look at sustainable living practices, right? New ways where in the sustainability, you can produce more income. On a collective level, as we see Uranus come retrograde in Taurus, it's going to revolutionize our global financial systems. And along with Pluto retrograde, which I'm going to talk about next, we're going to see some crazy, surprising developments. I think especially in cryptocurrency And especially this is going to happen sooner than later. And maybe I think even before the election, changes in banking regulations. Maybe not the complete change, but already being, we're already being primed and then they're getting us ready for this. There's going to be innovative economic policies, and hopefully these will be so innovative that they'll help with the serious inflation that we are experiencing, which most of the time this is what we always experience in the collective. Like there's inflation and then they drop the interest rates. Why? So that they could reduce the inflation, so kind of land the plane softly. But what we don't understand is that that is an outdated way and of behaving in relationship to money, and it's no longer working, especially because there's all these other innovative ways. So I just hope that what does get pushed out into the collective consciousness, it really is a solution, and it's not something that is going to create more control. Because now let's talk about the abuse of power and control that we're actually seeing and that we're feeling due to Uranus being retrograde, changing our value systems, the way we relate to money, but then Pluto. That's the star of the show this week. Beyond the new moon in Virgo, which I'll talk about here next, Pluto, our dear friend, retrograding back into Capricorn for the last time. We will never see Pluto in Capricorn in our lifetime again. Pluto is very slow in movement. Pluto takes 248 years to go around a specific sign. So we will not experience this again, but we've experienced a major rebirth, especially the last 16 years when this transit first began. And this transit is crazy because Capricorn is about government, abuse of power, abuse of control, and anything related to the way we govern ourselves and the government as a collective consciousness. And it's so funny because it's gonna leave Capricorn for ever, right? Until 248 years, but it's gonna go into Aquarius. It came back into Capricorn just right before the election and right over the election period. Why? To help us look at all of the ways that power has been abused. And what it's doing is it's revealing these hidden truths about our own power structures, the government power structures, and we're going to see so much revelation. If you think you've already seen a lot, that's nothing compared to what's coming as it relates to corruption in these high places. These very much needed fundamental shifts and how we view authority and governance. And it's also, again, as above, so below. It's going to affect you wherever Pluto sits in your chart. As a Capricorn here, everything, my entire life. I am not even close to the person I used to be when this transit first began in 2008. A lot of Capricorns didn't even make it because it was just so incredibly transformative. And if you resisted the change, then you really struggled and you caused a lot of suffering and illnesses and things of that nature. Believe me, as much as I want to say that I didn't resist the change, it was not easy. And everything in my life completely changed. And it began in 2008 with my spiritual awakening. So I'm nothing I in my life is the same. Not my relationships, not my business, not my connection to God, and my spiritual beliefs. Nothing is the same at all. Like complete 360. So one way though that we are triggered by this transit is because it's also making us look at how we've abused our power. And for a woman, there's so many ways that we abuse our power and we don't even know we're doing it a lot of the times. We're doing this unconsciously. It's almost like a program. But we do this in many ways. Workplace, a female manager might consistently assign the most challenging or undesirable tasks to employees that she personally dislikes. That's abuse of power. In a personal relationship, a woman might use emotional manipulation or maybe even sex to control her partner. Maybe doing things like threatening to leave or withholding affection unless her demands are met. That is abuse of power. In a community leadership role, a woman leading an organization might use her position to exclude or marginalize members who disagree with her. As a parent, a mother might consistently favor one child over the others. How many times do we see that in generational trauma? And mothers like this usually use the excuse of, oh no, it's because this child needed me more. That's why I'm giving her more attention. Are you sure? Because this might just be parental authority that's giving unfair advantages or attention to a preferred child. That's so sad. That's something my mom always, she was so adamant about breaking that cycle because my mom suffered a lot with that. So with us, she was like, oh, it's so fair. And my dad too, he's just consciously fair. But like I never in my life felt that my mom loved one of, because it's myself, my brother, and my two sisters. Never felt that my mom paid more attention or loved one of us more than the other, and it's because she was so adamant about breaking that cycle. Many mothers do this, and they're not even aware that they're doing it, and it's a program based on what how their mother treated them. So there's so many different ways, even social media. You could be an influencer, right? And you might be using your platform to spread misinformation or to bully others now that you have this power. In so many ways, abuse of power shows up, and we need to reflect on that, whether we were the ones that were abusing this power, or perhaps we also were part of a situation, an entanglement where power was being abused in our lives or against us. In those situations, we still need to reflect. This Pluto retrograde in Capricorn for the last time is going to make you, it's going to trigger you because it's going to come back for this last time to maybe bring up all these old memories. Think back to 2008. What was happening in your life? What was ending, right? What were the challenges? And especially between 2008 and now, there has to be a theme. You're just not conscious about it. What were the recurring themes as it relates to the challenges, especially we're going through? Because those are the ways power structures have shown up in your life. And now, as Pluto goes retrograde in Capricorn for the last time, from now until November 18th, it's time to bring those into the light. It's time to make peace. It's time to really just celebrate, because the only thing that I keep hearing in my head is like, this is the last hurrah. Like I feel like there's like a victory song in my head, but not everyone feels this way. Why? Because a lot of people that resisted change in the last 16 years or basically did not get out of their own way, they're not going to be feeling this way. They're going to be feeling very anxious. They're going to feel like something big is happening, but not necessarily like a positive thing. So there's going to be anxiety, there's going to be worry, there's going to be like that feeling like the other shoe's going to drop. So if that's you, you need to reflect and you really need to meditate and come into this stillness to understand what Pluto is doing you as a favor, which is giving you these signs and these experiences to really understand what the heck it is that is dying in your life. And then you got to grieve it. You know, that's one of the things that we're doing in my community at the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy for generational healing. You know, we're on this 40-day journey to activate the inner child, to connect it with our higher self, to release that identity of the wounded inner child. And one of the things we're doing to culminate that 40-day journey is at the end of it, we're hosting a rites of passage ceremony on the fall equinox in September. Why? Because this is a three-part process that we're all integrating. First, we gotta grieve. You have to grieve the old self dying. You have to acknowledge that as painful as your past was, that it was part of the whole, and that all the puzzle pieces can come together if you are working on healing the mind and grieving, which is what feeling all these emotions that you have not allowed yourself to feel and that your ancestors haven't felt. And then there's also like the second stage, which is gratitude. Can you actually find gratitude for your past, for your ancestors, and for what you went through? And then there's grace, because what happens after grieving and gratitude, there's like all the puzzle pieces come together. Now you can use your past, and especially if there were mistakes, as wisdom to not repeat the lesson and to help others navigate their own journey. So that's one of the things we're doing in our community. For all of you in September, it's really crucial to make peace with these things from the past. And today in our generational healing cycle, we're going to be talking about how to do that, how to use energy to help you make peace with your past so that you're able to accept the present and stop living in the future, which is what we typically do when we're running away from a painful past. So this Pluto retrograde, so much to say around it. I will talk more about it as we move through it. And like I said, check out last week's podcast episode to really get more information on, well, what does it really mean for me? So on top of these two things, we also welcomed on September 2nd, right after that, this new moon in Virgo. And this new moon, although it's very supportive to help us make change in our life, it's making us feel very uncomfortable. Why? Because Virgo is a perfectionist. Virgo is very mindful about the daily tasks. Virgo loves to be very self-aware about the power of our habits and also our physical health. So this new moon in Virgo is bringing up a lot of these breakthroughs, awareness as to how you get in your own way, and especially with those daily habits, like the foods you're eating, your exercise routine, your meditation practice. Like, are you really in alignment with those three things? Because if you're not, this is like your opportunity to realign so that you can physically heal your body. And that's crucial, especially during this month, to start making those lifestyle changes, those little things like I'm going to bed earlier, or because your morning routine starts in the nighttime, or I'm taking out this habit from my life because it's not serving me anymore. It's crucial to do that now at the beginning of the month because that's going to help you stay in your body. Remember, one of the most saddest things about generational trauma patterns, if you've been through trauma of abuse, whatever that looks like, as a child, as an adult, or you come from a lineage like that, is that we don't know how to stay in our body. We disassociate and we numb and we run away and we, with social media, with food, with drugs, with toxic relationships. And if you really take on this energy of the new moon and make these intentions, and they don't have to be huge, small lifestyle changes, going to bed earlier, drinking more water, fasting maybe for a couple of days to get you back into realignment, whatever that looks like, you're going to be feeling a lot more secure in your body. You're going to be able to navigate this month with a lot more sovereignty, and that's exactly what you need, my dear sisters, because after this week, I mean, the energy just picks up momentum. There's a lot of different transits that are happening that are powerful, like I mentioned last week, but we're getting closer to eclipse season. We have a full moon lunar eclipse coming up on the 17th, and then we have the fall equinox, which is a complete portal of shift in consciousness. So there's this energy. This first week is really important to use to ground, to create this foundation, routines, to know that triggers are going to be coming up from the last 16 years cycle, but to then use that awareness to know that you not only are you on the right path, but that you're supported to actually make these changes and to enter into this new era. So very powerful week of astrology. Very important for us to stay grounded in our bodies and to purge and feel all the emotions that we're feeling. And most importantly, very crucial for us to stay committed to our inner work of meditation so that we can have enough life force energy to navigate through this. And also we can have the awareness that we need to make those changes. So this week, expect lots of movement and lots of emotions. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually a really beautiful thing. So now that we've talked a lot about the astrology of this week and how to help you navigate more, I want to get into our generational healing segment today. And I want to talk about specifically energy and debunk a couple of myths. Because I think when people hear the word Kundalini, either they know nothing about it or everything they've heard about it is completely wrong. So, what I want to do in this segment of the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast, which, by the way, if you're enjoying, don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and please share it with other community members, other sisters in your community, because we are creating a movement here, a global movement of generational healing. But today I want to talk about a topic that touches all of us, and it has to do with specifically the generational childhood pattern or pattern of childhood trauma. And I want to talk specifically about how these are basically emotional and behavioral imprints that get passed down through our family lines, often unconsciously, of course, that shape our lives in such profound ways. And I want today to especially discuss how addressing these patterns is crucial for our personal growth and healing. Because from that very common generational trauma pattern of childhood trauma, whether it's sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sometimes it's not so obvious, right? Like it could be mom was depressed and she never hit you, she never hurt you emotionally, but she was absent, right? She was not present with you because of her own pain. These patterns are so conniving and sometimes they're not as obvious, right? But by understanding and transforming these patterns and these wounds, we not just liberate ourselves, we break the cycle for future generations, and we heal past generations, because ultimately time is an illusion. It impacts past and future. The present does. And this work really is a gift. It's a gift to you, to your ancestors, and to all descendants. And that's why it's so crucial. And from there, because the four major generational patterns that I help women disrupt are the same ones I had to heal and disrupt, which is addiction. We'll talk more about that in future episodes, depression, toxic relationship patterns, and then there's childhood trauma patterns. Those are the major four, right? Well, if you look at the major four, all three, addiction, depression, and toxic relationship patterns, stem from the childhood trauma pattern. That's how traumatic, or that's how impactful this pattern actually is. And it's not just what it does to us spiritually. I mean, scientifically, this stuff is serious. And now we're finally talking about this in mainstream media, thanks to doctors like Dr. Gabor Mate, who's been doing the holy work of studying this for like 50 years. And now people are finally listening, because it's not that they weren't listening before, it's just that before, and it's still the same, the pharmaceutical companies benefit from you continuing to stay sick. And especially since you're a child, they make lots of money from you. So this information is not wanting to be put out into mainstream media because it's going to mess up the pharmaceutical industry. And that's why it's taken so long. But now it's become more common for you to be able to scroll down your social media feed and to really understand just how impactful these childhood traumatic experiences are to you as an adult. And not just that, is that it didn't start with you. I can assure you 100% of the time that if you went through some kind of childhood traumatic experience, your mother went through it, or your grandmother went through it, or your great grandmother went through it, because these patterns become programmed in the nervous system at the womb. At the womb. So if your mom wouldn't have experienced it, she wouldn't have programmed you with it. And grandma and great grandma. And there's a lot of science behind what these patterns actually do to us as a human being. And it's not necessarily the trauma itself, the experience, it's how we identify to those experiences. And then what it does to us scientifically in the body is insane. Childhood trauma significantly impacts brain development and your nervous system functioning. That's the foundation of your mental health and physical health and spiritual health. So when we as children experience these traumatic experiences, it absolutely alters the structure and the function of the brain, particularly in those areas where they're responsible for basically emotion and emotional regulation and stress response, because this is where we see the connection to energy. Energy is emotions. Emotions are energy in motion. And our emotions, because they're quite literally energy in motion, if they are unconscious of anger, resentment, grievances, frustration, fear, all of those absolutely dysregulate the nervous system and create cognitive dysfunction in the brain. I mean, literally the hippocampus, the amygdala, these parts of the brain that are responsible for your stress response, like they shrink in size. Isn't that crazy? No wonder we have high levels of anxiety. No wonder we constantly think we're in that traumatic experience, even if we're not. And then trauma, what it does to the nervous system is that it keeps us in this constant state of fight or flight, releasing what? Cortisol. And we think that this state is normal because that's all we know. It absolutely affects how we perceive and interact with the world. It's like our internal energy system is just stuck in the same pattern of a high alert or shutdown. Like that movie Click. That's it's not even a scary movie, but it's the scariest movie I've ever seen in my life. With Adam Sandler, my goodness, his life just flashes before him. He's not even conscious. Why? Because he's working like a robot, just working. Wife divorces him, kids don't talk to him because he's on just this program, going. That's your internal energy system being stuck. But in a trauma situation, it's in high alert. It constantly thinks it's being chased after, or that people are talking about you, or that, the same thing is going to happen. When is the other shoe going to drop? So in a very fascinating way, these trauma responses then get passed down through generations via epigenetics. And I've talked a lot about epigenetics in this podcast episode. But it doesn't mean that our DNA sequence, we're like now basically slaves or victims, that basically the sequence now changes forever and we're done. No, because what this means through epigenetics is that how our genes are expressed can be altered by traumatic experiences, but they can also be altered by great experiences or by the healing work of meditation. These alterations, although they can be inherited, they explain why we struggle with anxiety or depression without having even experienced the trauma ourselves, believe it or not. But they're not set in stone, because everything is an energy, everything is frequency, including your DNA. And if we introduce a new sound frequency where this trauma energy gets stuck in the body, then that changes the entire perception and relationship to the experience. So when you think of it from a Kundalini Yoga perspective, trauma affects our energy centers, our chakras, right? We've talked about these before. I've shown you some pictures how this actually occurs. So our energy centers are like little brains, right? And these little brains correspond to different aspects of who we are, or of our being, physical, emotional, spiritual. So when trauma occurs, these energy centers become blocked. They're not circulating and processing the energy, the emotions the way they need to. So what does this do? It then disrupts the flow of prana or life force energy. Everything is energy, right? So, for example, there's childhood abandonment. Maybe dad left, mom wasn't present because she was depressed. They affect your root chakra right at the level. And this is going to lead to feelings of insecurity. No wonder so many people that have gone through childhood trauma don't feel safe in their bodies. Having a lot of fear. Things like sexual abuse. They impact not only the root, the sacral, and all of them, in my opinion, but at the very core, the root and the sacral. It causes issues with intimacy and creativity later in life. Now, Kundalini Yoga, the breath, the meditations that we do, the way we position our hands, the chanting, that is basically the science of energy. So it's a transformative practice that combines these physical postures, these breathing techniques. It's a fundamental meditation practice. And mantra that we chant, the specific sound frequencies to awaken our Kundalini energy, that is white tantric energy that is coiled at the root of your spine, that would heal you every single time, but it can't because you've gone through childhood traumatic experiences. And because of that, the energy cannot rise up. So at the core of Kundalini Yoga is the concept of Kundalini energy. It's not the same thing. And this energy is described as this coiled serpent resting at the base of our spine. There's other channels of energy down there. There's tantric yoga, which is sexual energy, and this is not like bad or like perverted. It's like an actual sacred practice that you have to study for all your lifetime to even understand, just the way Kundalini Yoga is. But what this coiled energy is its untapped potential. It's your life force. It's your medicine cabinet. And when we practice Kundalini Yoga, we're working to basically awaken and raise this energy safely. There are people that have had spontaneous Kundalini awakenings. I know that, believe me. But that's not what this is. And this is an exact process and a safe pathway to awaken this energy so that you can allow the circulation of prana through the chakras and the energetic bodies. Because if you've been through any type of childhood abuse, the energy's stuck here and you're not getting enough cleansing, purging, and flow up at the other chakras, which are obstructing all of these different basically responsibilities of those chakras. Yogi Bhajan brought this ancient practice of Kundalini Yoga to the West in 1969. At one point, it was only available if you were a king or a queen, or if you also were a guru or a yogi, basically, if you came from a lineage of gurus and yogis. But it's not just a physical exercise, has nothing to do with that. It has to do with mental. It's a fundamental meditation practice because your body's going to do anything as long as the mind is controlled and healed. So ultimately, Kundalini Yoga is a technology for expanding our consciousness and connecting with our higher self. In trauma, grief, for example, this is one of the things that we learned a lot in Kundalini Yoga therapist school. Trauma and grief, and when you're in grief, is a series of contractions and expansions, contractions and expansions. The practice allows you to contract and expand your consciousness so you can clear those traumatic experiences from your energy field. Clear even 7 generations before you. Generational trauma ultimately is all of the emotions and grief your ancestors could not process and feel. So this practice, Yogi Bhajan would always say, is for householders, people like you and I that are living regular lives out there, kings or queens, right? So it's not just for like monks. And so how do we use Kundalini Yoga and the Kundalini energy for healing and self-realization exactly? Well, it's through the physical practice of actually integrating and experiencing the meditations. We prepare our body to handle this increased energy flow. And these exercises are basically combined with breath patterns to help us clear blockages in our energy channels. And like I mentioned, meditation and mantra. Every single day I chant in our community, Sovereign Sisterhood Academy, in our group coaching program. We have a daily virtual meditation spot center where we practice a specifically chant that we chant together every morning. What does it do to help us purge, cleanse, expand our consciousness, bring ourselves back into calm and focus, even for a second? Because meditation is not about going into a coma, it's about you creating a space for deeper awareness and intuition about your emotions. So, this is where we start to tap into our inner wisdom. We connect to God and heal our relationship with who we think God is. And the cool thing about it is that as you consistently practice, you begin to rewire the subconscious mind of these old patterns, because your subconscious mind is way more powerful than your conscious mind, including those inherited generational trauma patterns. Why? Because you're regulating the nervous system. You're rewiring the programming of the nervous system. You're rewiring the program of the brain. And this clearing, what it does is that it allows us to see ourselves and our experiences from a higher perspective, not just from the program of trauma. Ultimately, what happens is that as we awaken and raise our Kundalini energy, we're expanding our consciousness. That's what you were born to do. Either you're born knowing how to do it, like Tesla says in a quote, or you have to learn how to do it, which is through Kundalini Yoga, he said, those specific words. Because these expansions of consciousness, they lead to what Yogi Bhajan called self-realization. Same thing that Yogananda taught. There's not a lot of different Kriya yogas, because Kriyas are a specific recipe you do to get a specific result. Self-realization temple created by Yogananda, the author of Autobiography of a Yogi, that's a type of Kriya yoga. Kundalini Yoga is a Kriya yoga. And these are beyond healing. They were given to us by God for a deep understanding of our true nature as infinite divine beings. Of course, in Miracle Spiritual Psychotherapy, which I also have studied since 2008 and have taught since 2008, Spiritual Awakening, Pluto going into Capricorn, same thing. It's the path of self-realization, accepting the atonement at one mint, at one with God in the moment. So as it relates to generational healing, Kundalini Yoga, what it does is that it gives us the tools to release these energetic blockages, to regulate our nervous system, and to shift our perspective. It helps us build the strength through prana, breath, and the resilience to face these inherited patterns with courage and with a lot of compassion. And I just want to remind you that this awakening is a process of the energy. It's not about perfection, going into a coma when you meditate. It's about being consistent. Not for, you can meditate for 2.5 hours like I do every day, because that's what I like to do. Or you can start with 3 minutes a day. And it's just as powerful as long as you are intentional and mindful. And you trust the process of the gradual transformation. That's why Yogi Bhajan would always say, keep up and you will be kept up. This means that as we persistently show up for our practice, the universe supports our healing and growth. God says you are responsible to show up I am responsible for the results. That's what God says. So you show up however you are, come as you are, and let God handle the results. This really helps provide this foundational understanding of how energy works, Kundalini Yoga, and its potential for healing generational trauma. That's why we go 7 generations back and 7 forward. Kundalini Yoga, you have to understand that it teaches us so much about energy balancing, and how these imbalances show up. But ultimately, it's the science of energy that allows us to come into union with ourselves. So even if you're someone who has always experienced constant physical, mental, spiritual health issues, chronic pain, relationship patterns, deep sense of disconnection, know that there is a path for you to come back home to you. And it all is related to energy. So we're going to talk a lot more about this in this week's live healing session. In fact, I'm going to be sharing, because Satori, the beginners community for women looking to generationally heal, and then my group coaching program, the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy for generational healing, is not open for enrollment. You can always still join us in our complimentary free private Facebook group, the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement. I'll link it below here in the comments. But we're going to be working this month with a specific inner child healing meditation that I'm going to share, and we're going to practice it together every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. for our live healing session, while we also go through teaching on generational healing. This week, I'm going deeper into understanding energy. We're going to talk about the specifics of the nervous system and the brain and emotions, and then we're going to practice this meditation together. So you can always join us there. So you find Sovereign Sisterhood movement in Facebook, and like I said, I'll link it below. Click on that link, ask to join us, and you can actually begin your generational healing journey there, and it gives you a really good experience as to what to expect. So be sure to join us over there, especially for this week's live healing session, where I'm going to go way deeper into these teachings, because there's a lot more to say around energy, Kundalini, and how to disrupt the pattern. So join me over there, and like I said, I will link it below. Well, moving right along into this week's ancestral guidance. My goodness. And can I just say that the ancestors this week and every week always have our backs. Like, the messages are always so poignant and clear. And it's interesting that as we shift our focus this week with the energy of the astrology back to the 16-year cycle that we're closing, with Pluto going retrograde into Capricorn, that the reading and the guidance for this week also talks a lot about power, our abuse of power, and not losing our confidence because of what we've experienced. Remember, we're currently experiencing this Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, right? And this week, what the ancestors are saying is you're going through a monumental shift, and the cards are revealing exactly this vivid picture of the journey you've been on and how to prepare yourself. So let's explore them one by one. In the immediate past, the first card that came out was the King of Wands. However, it came out in the reverse side. So picture a throne, right? Adorned with lions and salamanders, all these symbols of fire and transformation. This is not from the traditional tarot deck card. I actually love this one way better. This is from the Alma Latina tarot deck card by Eugene Vinitsky. When I found out that there was a tarot card deck. Yeah, there you go. Tarot card deck of representing indigenous teachings, like from the Mayan, the Aztec, the Mexica. I was like, oh my God, I need to make sure I have it. And he sold out really quickly on the first creation of these. So I don't even know if he's making these again or if they're available again. I got mine on Etsy. But I love this interpretation of the tarot, because it connects me so much more to ancient ancestors from Mexico, or indigenous tribes from back there. And it just gives an even more meaning to the reading, in my opinion. And this week, in the reverse position, the King of Wands is represented by this really powerful leader, as you can see, like he's the king, right? But reverse, it's almost like in the very near past, you were struggling with your natural abilities to lead. There could have been even some kind of stagnation with your creativity, where maybe you were making really impulsive decisions and you were not considering long-term effects, long-term impact. You were struggling with asserting your conviction effectively. And I can't tell you how much I feel like this entire reading is about the last 16 years. So see how this resonates, because this is the King of Wands is very, very mutable energy, represented by Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, expansion. But a reverse, it's almost like there's an expansion of self-doubt, insecurity, there's a repressed creativity, there's lack of energy or motivation. There's maybe even manipulative or domineering behavior. So maybe what this is speaking on is about the way that you have abused your power, like some of the ways that I mentioned right now, right? So you're coming from this period of like, this is what happened. I abused my power. But what's important is for us to learn lessons in order for us to not be afraid, because even in the immediate present and in the future, you'll see next, it's like we're still kind of scared. The immediate present card that came up was the Queen of Wands, and she is reversed. So she is the sign of fertility, of nurturing, but upside down, it's almost like she feels like she can't openly nurture. She's almost like feeling very, very insecure in her life. Like there's these situations where she's overcoming just this codependency and neediness. Or perhaps she's very scared of becoming that again, or connecting with someone that's like that, or even someone that's manipulative. So again, this Pluto retrograde energy, like where was the abuse of power? Like you're still recovering from that. When we abuse our power in this lifetime, it feels like God almost humbles us to the point where when we start to gain power again, then we self-sabotage, and then we reject it because we don't want to go through what we went through. The last 16 years, whatever it is that you went through, I know that it was not easy. I know that it was difficult. Lots of things that died, right? Lots of things that you had to learn as lessons. But just because you went through that doesn't mean that your present moment is going to be the same, especially if you've been doing the inner work. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a new result. But if you've been meditating and, the science of energy, Kundalini Yoga, you're not even this close to the same person you were yesterday when you're chanting mantra. So I know that you still have PTSD and you're kind of still afraid of like the other shoe to drop. That's what the reverse Queen of Wands is. It's like not only the other shoe to drop, but like I don't feel creative. I don't feel safe being creative. I don't feel safe nurturing, because the last 16 years I built all these walls. So even now, like it feels like, is this too good to be true? You're disconnected from your inner wisdom because Pluto going back into Capricorn is bringing up the PTSD, and you're like, why am I remembering all these things from the past now? Why do I feel like something bad is going to happen? Well, the reason is this is just because of that, because you're going through the grieving process of allowing an old self to die. That's a very important process. And as uncomfortable as you're feeling in the present with the Queen of Wands reverse, what she's saying is that don't forget, you are the fire sign. You are this incredible goddess that can be very nurturing and that can drop her walls. So it's these walls that you're putting back up because of all the stuff that's coming back due to the PTSD from Pluto retrograde in the last 16 years. And then in the immediate future, to finish us off, now we get the reverse page of cups. Do you see how he's reaching out to hold his hands out for to catch the water? So what this means is that in the reverse, we're like, it's hard for us to express our emotions and creativity again. We're being called to release these old emotional patterns and to embrace a more authentic way of being. This card is represented by Cancer, by the planet of Mercury influencing it. And the page reverse is like emotional immaturity. It's creative blocks, difficulty expressing yourself, throat chakra blockages, disappointment in love, emotional manipulation, inability to accept. So what this future card is saying is that pay attention. Is it just the program from the last 16 years, or is Pluto really showing you the truth about where there is still abuse of power? And if that's the case, can you look at that situation in neutrality and respond differently? So if the way you used to respond when people used to abuse their power over you was in anger, frustration, shutting down, not speaking up, can you respond differently and actually have a neutral conversation with the person or even with yourself without judgment, without taking it personal? Can you become more emotionally mature to deal with what is being revealed right now? Uranus retrograde, Pluto retrograde. What is being revealed about the situation, especially the last 16 years? Because you're missing a lot of opportunities in the near future if you don't do this. Why? Because of fear and insecurity. Because you're avoiding this emotional depth. You're avoiding the messages that Pluto and Uranus are trying to get to you. Because combined, this is exactly the transformation that Pluto has been orchestrating. I mean, think about it. Like, even the way they showed up in that order. The King of Wands, reassess our relationship with power. Queen of Wands, assess our and confront our deepest insecurities. And then Page of Cups, telling us to move into this emotional maturity where the inner child wounded identity has now merged with our higher selves. So the ancestors are noticing that we're navigating a period of internal struggle. And they want us to know that it's okay to feel uncertain or insecure at times. These feelings are part of the human experience. However, they want to remind us this week of the incredible strength and creativity that lies within us, of the last 16 years, the resilience that we have demonstrated. So what this really is a time for you to nurture your inner flame, to reconnect with your passions, your authentic self. Your ancestors are encouraging you to practice a lot of self-compassion and to gradually learn to step back into your power. To remember that your light is meant to be shined, not to be hidden away, because that's why they suffered and struggled. In our Sovereign Sisterhood Academy, our 40-day inner child journey, culminating with this upcoming fall equinox rites of passage ceremony, is perfectly timed with this cosmic shift. These are pathways that you need to explore also this month. Because as we merge our identification of this wounded inner child and we deal with the energy work, which is the emotions, and we merge with our higher self to release these identities, what we're doing is we're actively participating and using this Plutonian energy to transform. So I just want to remind you, Sovereign Sisters, that we are living in an epic time. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for all of us for healing and generational growth. Your work ripples through your entire lineage, past, present, and future. So especially as we close out this 16-year cycle with Pluto's transition, trust in your inner wisdom and the guidance of your ancestors. So much this week. There's so much more that I could say, but we're going to leave it here for today. And if you want to go deeper, like I said, join us in our live healing session this week, where we're going to practice an actual meditation, a Kundalini Yoga meditation that specifically addresses the inner child. Link is below. Find us on Facebook, Sovereign Sisterhood Movement. Well, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. Of course, if you have found any of this information helpful, please share it with your sisters, with your friends, and like it and subscribe so that you can stay connected and get notifications when I do upload a brand new episode. Your support not only helps us grow our movement of generational healing worldwide, but it also heals you and 7 generations before and after you. Thank you for joining us once again, and I'll see you in the next episode. Satnam.